Today we're going to be looking at the Atom, an ultra-compact travel stroller from Maclaren. We've been very excited to review this stroller for a long time now, as it is the first real departure, design-wise, from the umbrella concept that originated Maclaren as a brand way back at the end of the 1960s, and which allowed them to dominate the travel stroller industry for decades. At this point though, the umbrella concept has been outdated for a long time, and Maclaren's inability to adapt towards new design types, in addition to some rather serious recall and legal issues in the early 2000s, has cost them their position in the market. The key shift among travel strollers is, of course, that introduced by BabyZen, the concept that a stroller should fold down to dimensions small enough to pass as cabin luggage. And with the Atom, it seems that Maclaren has finally, belatedly, gotten it. In order to stay relevant, they must build to this new industry standard. So let's have a look, starting off with a few stats. The Atom weighs in at 5.4 kilos, definitely on the light side among ultra-compacts, and folds down to 53.5 by 45 by 21.5 centimeters, which is within the cabin luggage guidelines as set by the IATA, the International Air Traffic Association. This is important, really important in my opinion, as the majority of ultra-compact travel strollers are actually over these limits, severely reducing the number of airlines that will accept them as cabin luggage. And if your model doesn't pass as cabin luggage, then what's the point, right? You might as well just use a larger stroller if you have to check it anyway. The Atom can take up to a whopping 25 kilos in the seat, but only a measly 2 kilos in the shopping basket, with an additional 5 kilos of capacity in the stuff your stuff pocket on the back of the seat. Okay, let's talk about the seat. The Atom has a full recline and an extendable canopy with good sun coverage. Taken as a whole, the seat seems quite large, which is one of the things that Maclaren has focused on to promote the model. But its size is deceptive, unfortunately. Just measuring the overall length of the seat back, plus the baseboard, plus the leg rest, as well as the legitimately slightly larger than average width, the Atom's seat seems quite spacious, while in reality, when the leg rest is folded down, the actual baseboard is on the shallow side, which can be a bit of a problem, especially in connection with the fact that the upright position is not quite upright enough, meaning that if you're trying to get a full seated position with the leg rest down, the shallowness of the baseboard may make it feel as though your child is slipping a bit, with an older child at least. This is somewhat offset by the footrest, since your child can use it to hold themselves up. But the footrest itself is also somewhat problematic, unfortunately, because it sits a bit too high up, again impacting older children. One last problem with seat size is the length of the seat back, which is also a bit short, meaning that an older child's head is likely to press against the mesh back wall in the reclined position, where they might get knocked around by your legs while you're pushing the stroller if you're not careful. What these combined factors mean is that the Atom has an effective age limit for optimal comfort at between 2 and 2.5, but will work perfectly well for children before this point. In fact, when it comes to newborns, the Atom not only comes stock with Maclaren's inbuilt cocoon system, which is a cool thing for thrifty parents looking to use the Atom during those first 6 months without purchasing additional items, but can also take both a car seat and a bassinet, which is my own personal favorite if you must use a stroller this small for a newborn, as they can both lie down and are protected by somewhat sturdier walls than just the padded fabric of the cocoon. The number one complaint about the Atom seat is the harness system, which a lot of people find hard to clip into place. But Maclaren harnesses have always been a bit more fiddly than a lot of other brands. And my guess is that this oft-cited problem is mostly about getting used to lining up the buckles before you slam them home. If, on the other hand, the actual locking mechanism feels a bit too stiff, then a little silicone spray should fix the problem. As far as your own comfort is concerned, the Atom is quite easy to fold, and it has a certain degree of structural symmetry, which makes the fold feel sturdier. The use of memory buttons on the uppermost portion of the fold also means that the Atom can essentially be folded with one hand, though this does entail activating 3 separate points with your one hand. When folded, the Atom has both a handle and a strap, though the strap is a bit short to work easily on your shoulder, and the Atom also comes with a travel bag with a handy drawstring and its own quite nice shoulder strap. Looking at the shopping basket, the Atom's basket is decently sized, but as I mentioned earlier, has a lower than average weight capacity, and is also a little on the difficult side as far as accessibility is concerned, due to a crossbar in the back and the leg rest in the front. When it comes to maintenance and repair, the textiles are relatively simple to remove and are machine washable. As far as other problems are concerned, Maclaren strollers are sold with a lifetime warranty, though I hear that it's a bit of a chore to deal with their bot-driven customer service. Driving-wise, the Atom steers quite smoothly, with a handle of average height and average 6-inch-ish wheels. It won't handle terrain despite the fact that it has some suspension, but then this is to be expected on ultra-compacts. I do have some concerns over how long it will stay comfortable to drive, as in how long the chassis will stay tight and comfortably functional in the face of time and wear, but we'll get into that more in a moment when we go over the mechanics. The only real negative I would say for now with regards to driving though is situational, and it's that flip-flop friendly swivel locks, which are easily activated by pressing on these buttons on the front frame. Fun for you flip-flop wearing parents, but also unfortunately fun for an older toddler who's bored from getting wheeled around too long. Okay, let's move on to the mechanics then, starting with the folding system. Okay, we're going to start off by talking about the folding system on this stroller, and chassis design when it comes to ultra compacts is very much determined by how it folds, as the folded down product is really what you're after with an ultra compact, right? So the overall folding system on this is very much copied over from the Baby Zen Yo-Yo. We will be doing a comparison next between this model and the Baby Zen Yo-Yo, show you all the similarities and the small differences. But if you understand how a yo-yo works, then you'll understand the Atom kind of implicitly. So you have your two buttons here at the top. They are memory buttons, and they do fold down that handle and the canopy as one unit. And then down below, you have this second activation point where you're going to pull the safety, press in on this button. And in the case of the Atom, this has a wire that runs through the inside of this frame and releases, let's see, 2 points here on either side. So there's like a metal hook that attaches to this rivet here. Okay, so overall, when you have this sort of a setup where you have three separate mechanisms, it's kind of nice. You don't have as many like internal wire systems that can go bad over time. A lot of ultra compacts these days are having like a single button in the center of the handle at the top, and that necessitates a lot of internally complex mechanisms that can break over time. You do, of course, have that wire activation system here. It's not like locking in the middle, it's locking on either side. So it is possible that you could have problems with that system over time. But it's still better than a lot of the internal complexity that we see these days. I noticed three kind of chief weak points on the Atom. So the first being that underneath this leather handle sleeve, it's like the handle itself is made of plastic, and it's riveted in on either side. So this is going to create 2 points here that can weaken down over time, add a little bit of looseness to the overall structure. The second is this crossbar that runs here, which is actually quite weak in the way it's like got like a single rivet, which sets it up on either side here. I see that as another point where that rivet is going to weaken down over time and add to looseness. And then the third sort of chief weakness with the overall folding system is the fact that this central locking mechanism is split into two parts. Because if you do have all of these points, the points that I mentioned, plus several other points that are riveted or like just, loosely put together in terms of how the whole construction is set up, all of those points are going to loosen over time. And if you have this sort of 2 points at which it locks, what that looseness will mean is symmetry issues, where as the chassis kind of loses its overall rigidity, it might be hard for like one side to lock at exactly the same time as the other side. Just can make it a little bit more fiddly when you're starting to fold up and fold down the stroller as a whole. Okay, we're going to have a little bit of a closer look at the lower rear frame of the stroller then. So first thing I would talk about is that it does have the suspension units, but because it has the small wheels and because it's an ultra compact, a smaller stroller in general with the small wheels, that suspension isn't going to do that horribly much. You're still going to pretty much be stuck driving in malls and airports and smooth paved roads. You're not going to be able to take this thing off-road without it still bumping around like crazy and being very difficult to steer and drive. But it does have a little bit of suspension, so for those like brief times when you're going over slightly less even terrain, I suppose that does help a little bit. The brake system is here. The entire bar actually swivels, and it's a decent brake system. It just like rotates the bar and pops out the pins into the wheels. So there's not a lot of like internally complex mechanisms. There's not a lot of wires. There's no wires involved or anything like that. The point that I find a little bit worrisome on the rear frame in general, okay, you have your wheels are removable, so that's nice. You can replace the wheels if you have any sort of trouble. But the wheels actually sit incredibly tight in to the housings on the rear frame, and all of the bars and stuff, it's not made that thickly, including like the way the axle is set up and the axle holds into the wheel and stuff. What I think might happen, because those wheels sit so tightly to that housing, is that over time, as the wheels begin to loosen, or the shaft where the chassis goes, where the axle goes into, starts to widen out a bit and stuff, is you might wind up having trouble where the wheels press too tightly at an angle as it loosens up against this back rear housing, and it might feel as though the rear wheels lock up sometimes or can be a little bit difficult to push. I have seen some reports of this already. I do think that could be a problem if you tend to use this stroller a bit too hard in a way. So if you're using it for like occasional use and you're not putting overly too much weight and stuff, it probably won't be a problem, but over time as the thing loosens up, I would see that as a problem, the fact that those wheels are built to sit so tightly against that rear frame. Okay, when it comes to the front frame then, it again has the usual inbuilt suspension into the forks, but again, the size of the front wheels and the size of the overall stroller is going to prevent you from using it over any sort of real terrain, just a little bit extra suspension. It does have swivel locks, as I mentioned before. They are a little bit too accessible to curious feet, but other than that, I suppose if you're the flip-flop wearing type, then it's nice to have those easy on-off locking, that sort of locking setup. As far as wobble protection goes, there is no inbuilt suspension pads or anything like that to hold the wheel a little bit tighter. It is a little bit loose from the outset in that housing, but it's actually not that bad. I have seen worse. It also has the 2 points at which the axle is held in the vertical position, one being a larger lip here at the bottom, and then about halfway up the axle you have the actual notch which locks in place. And I noticed that Maclaren themselves have already used a lubricant there, and it is a sort of a very viscous lubricant. That's in my mind sort of a good sign, because that means that they have tested it with that sort of a lubricant and it's not going to immediately develop those wobble problems. So my guess is that though you could develop wobble problems over time, it's a little bit more protected against that sort of a thing than other sorts of strollers, where it's not built as well, the way that axle connects into the front wheel housing. Overall, the front frame then, I feel, is quite decently built for a stroller of this size, again, other than the easy accessibility of those front swivel locks. So, should you buy the Maclaren Atom? For the right price, I would say yes. Though there is definitely room to improve the model, it is highly hand luggage acceptable and does offer a lot in the way of comfort and functionality right out of the box that must usually be purchased as additional accessories with a lot, though not all, of the competition. Rain cover, travel bag, adjustable leg rest, extendable canopy, and an inbuilt newborn option. The chassis is built a little on the weak side in comparison to a few other models at the top end of the market, but then it does come with a lifetime warranty. I would say that the price tag at launch last year was a bit too high, but it's come down since then, and with half a century of developing their production and distribution network, there's a good chance that Maclaren might be able to afford to keep the price a bit lower. If you're looking for an ultra-compact travel stroller for use mainly on vacations, as in not for daily use, for the first couple of years of your child's life, then the Maclaren Atom is a decent option, in my opinion. In any case, we hope you found this video interesting, and if you did, we ask you subscribe, as it helps us to continue making videos in the future. Thank you.